Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Leveraging AI and Instructional Design in Education. I wanted to note that we will be monitoring the chat. We will plan to have time at the end of the presentation to address questions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. My name is Dr. Heather Leslie, and I'm an instructional designer at USD's Learning Design Center. I have a background in online teaching, course design, and educational development, and I've published chapters and journal articles in this area, as well as on the topics of student engagement and student-centered assessment methods like ungrading. I have a bachelor's, a doctorate, and 2 master's degrees. So I like to joke that I'm a forever student, and I think this has sort of helped me to maintain that student perspective when designing and teaching courses. I've also been invited to teach in the LDT program this summer, so I'm really looking forward to that as well. In terms of how I approach AI, I use it, but I also raise an eyebrow at it because there are a lot of layers to what it is and what it means. And to give you a little more context, I'll share with you my perspective as someone who identifies strongly with being a writer as well as an academic. This is a picture above my desk, or this is a picture of my desk, and right above my monitors is a metal artwork that says write. It's something I look to that reminds me to keep calm and write on. I love the craft of writing and the process of putting my thoughts into words and then refining those words to eloquently express ideas. This process of writing is difficult, and at times it's a major struggle, but I also love it. I love the journey and the destination because it's hard and it's worth it. And I'm sure other writers, artists, and creators out there feel the same way. To take something that exists in your mind and make it into something tangible is a beautiful part of the human experience. So part of me feels like I would be cheating myself if I offloaded most of my writing to AI. Because in the words of creative writing professor John Warner, writing is thinking. Most of all, I love the feeling I get when I'm in a state of flow when I write. You know that feeling. It's like when you're completely absorbed in something, like an activity, a task, to the point where you completely lose all track of time. It's an intrinsically positive experience. You're immersed in something because you love it, and at the same time, you are challenged by it. Some people call it being in the zone or having an energized focus. It's like when a child plays. This is kind of an adult version of that. Play is how children learn, by the way. And there are a lot of benefits to being in this flow state: skill development, enhanced creativity, better performance, and happiness. So that intrinsic aspect brings me a lot of joy in my work through writing, and I'm protective of that. And I'm also a bit worried that I'll be giving some of that up thanks to AI. So I have mixed feelings, and that's sort of where I'm coming from. I'm skeptical of AI, even though I use it a lot in my work as an instructional designer. And I also think it has a lot of benefits. My colleague Jeff approaches AI a little more optimistically than I do. I question it because my academic training and education taught me to question and not take things at face value. Being exposed to critical theory and critical pedagogy has also influenced my tendency to engage in critique and approach AI with a little more caution and skepticism. This is also part of who I am as an academic. Part of being an academic means you give and receive a lot of feedback. And the whole process of peer review, which you do when you submit work to academic publishers, kind of trains you to dissect and pick things apart. So these are the things that ground my perspective when it comes to AI. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Heather. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Simmons, and I've been an instructional designer for 24 years. I received my master's degree in instructional technology from San Francisco State University, and I've enjoyed teaching instructional design as an adjunct faculty member in the past, now working full-time as an instructional designer while working towards my PhD in leadership in higher education. The topic of my dissertation is generative AI and student engagement, exploring the use of generative AI in higher education assignments. As Heather mentioned, I am a tech optimist in that I believe that technology is our single greatest tool to leverage our way out of our most difficult problems. AI can help us do things we'd rather not do, tedious, repetitive work, for example. Although AI does not think like a human, in many cases it can match or even exceed the quality of human output, which is why your next employer will expect you to be able to leverage the strengths of AI in the work that you do. ChatGPT has passed bar exams, medical licensing exams, AP exams, and has sped up the search for new medicines, so much so that it was the basis for one Nobel Prize in chemistry this year. It doesn't tire or become distracted as we can. It also has the potential to personalize content on the fly for students in ways that are challenging for instructors with large class sizes. It can find an outstanding piece of media that perfectly fits the moment in a course development or create a well-designed presentation in a virtual blink of an eye. As much as I enjoy leveraging the use of AI for tasks such as those, my main concern is that one of our most important skills as humans is being threatened, our critical thinking skills. They've been actually under threat for quite a while too. With voice dialing, we no longer need to remember phone numbers. With GPS, we don't need to learn street names or directions. Those tasks are largely offloaded to technology now. One other converging trend that is placing critical thinking skills under even greater threat and has gone largely unrecognized is that we are physically getting closer and closer to our information, while technology, especially AI, is developing at ever accelerating speeds. From the searching of library holdings and card catalogs 2 decades ago, to searching for content using desktop and laptop computers, and even closer now, smartwatches, cell phones, and shortly to Meta's and Apple's impending augmented reality AR glasses, and even contact lenses, our information, especially as delivered by AI, is moving into our faces and ears and into our heads. So do you think if you think you can't ever leave your cell phone at home without returning for it now, just wait to see what taking off your AR glasses might feel like, much less leaving them at home. Will our critical thinking skills diminish as our dependence on AI and AR increases? Instructional design is being swept along with these opportunities and challenges. We are among the stewards of education who need to ensure that AI is used for all the benefits it can convey, while ensuring that we, current and future instructional designers, faculty and students, continue to develop critical thinking skills that will be so necessary to flourish in this coming age of AI. Okay, back to you, Heather.
All right, so thanks, Jeff. So here's what we're aiming to cover, taking both Jeff and my perspectives to give you some practical applications of AI in our jobs as instructional designers, and then posing some big questions as we grapple with what does this all mean? What does this mean for instructional design, and what does this mean for education? We should have some time at the end for your questions, and I believe Christy will be sending out the slides in a follow-up email since we have some links to resources you may want to check out on your own. But first, I'd like to begin by asking you, what does AI mean to you in your context? Please feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. This is a question we will return to at the end too. So while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and share this next part. What do we mean by AI? So before we get into the how of using AI, I'd like to sort of define what we mean by AI and what we're talking about in our context. Artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science that creates systems that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. In terms of the kind of AI that is impacting our work as instructional designers at this point, when we say AI, we're typically referring to generative AI or Gen AI, which uses a subset of AI called machine learning and natural language processing to generate words and images. Machine learning basically means that machines can learn from data and improve their performance over time. Natural language processing is where machines can interpret and generate human-sounding language. Gen AI that can generate sentences are called large language models, LLMs, which have really started to take off after the release of OpenAI's ChatGPT to the public in November 2022. But even though AI is being framed as this shiny new technology, AI research goes back like 70 years. But companies are rebranding the commercial potentials of AI. At the same time, it appears that AI development is now accelerating, although it's a bit difficult to discern fact from hype, which we'll get into a little bit later. There are 4 main LLMs: OpenAI's ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Anthropic's Claude, and Google's Gemini. Microsoft also invests heavily into OpenAI. So these big tech companies are the key players that really own and is driving the adoption of LLMs. The way LLMs work is they scrape the internet and train their statistical models to detect patterns of grammar, vocabulary, syntax. These models can then generate plausible sounding sequences of words, which we call output. So it's really important to note that LLMs are not knowledge machines. They don't hold knowledge. They use mathematical models to make predictions about words and phrases the same way as predictive text that you might use on your phone. And something I heard recently, it's not a thing knowing machine, it's a thing saying machine. There are also image generators like OpenAI's DALL-E, and Meta just came out with one. Another thing we're starting to see happen is that software companies are integrating LLMs into their existing products. But the thing to note here is that the LLMs that they're using are still ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. For example, Articulate now has AI in its Storyline and Rise products, but these versions cost additional money. And Microsoft also has integrations with its products for an additional fee. Chat, Gemini, Claude, and Copilot offer free limited versions and paid subscriptions. One thing to remember is that behind these tools, the real product behind these tools is data. So as we use these tools, we are feeding it our data for good and for bad. We'll get into the ethics of this in a bit. Also, our colleagues from the LDC also created these really great short courses on AI, which are linked in the slide. And they provide a great foundation on AI to get you started. So you can explore those at your own time when we send out the slides. So I mentioned LLMs being able to generate coherent sentences, which means you can use it for a multitude of tasks, like brainstorming ideas, having it edit or provide feedback. You know, sometimes you need a starting point, so it can help you get started with initial ideas. Other times you have an idea in mind, but you just need to refine it. And I have used all these tools to help me do pretty much everything from assignment instructions, discussion prompts, rubrics, presentations. Jeff has created some really impressive games, simulations, and branching scenarios. So all this can potentially make it easy to streamline the content and course development process. You no longer have to sort of muddle through some of the time-consuming tasks of coming up with clearly written instructions. And I know some of us are quite happy to offload the creation of rubrics. Some people might argue, though, that to be an effective instructional designer, you have to have foundational knowledge of these things, because then you can really use AI as a collaborator and potentially elevate your practice. So with that in mind, let's take a close look at the ways AI can be leveraged in creating course content. Take it away, Jeff.
Well, thanks again, Heather. Well, prompts are a number of different ways you can leverage AI in your work as an ID, beginning with prompts, image creation, assignments and rubrics, presentations, branching scenarios, entire modules and entire courses, and simulations. Over these next few minutes, we're going to cover these different tools, and it's a lot to cover in a short period of time. So let's get started. If you feel Heather and I are moving along too quickly, please remember this webinar is recorded and it'll be available to you afterwards. Prompts. Well, one of the most basic skills needed in using generative AI and large language models such as ChatGPT, Copilot, and the others is creating an input called a prompt that it obtains the desired output. And that's the key. You want a desired output, so you have to craft a prompt to get that. An entire industry has been created called prompt engineering. So what is a prompt? A prompt is a carefully worded input provided to a large language model to guide its response or output. It serves as the initial instruction or context that tells the model what kind of information, style, or task to focus on. You have to be very specific in what you choose. For example, here's the message area. And what you craft, the prompt you add into this area, again, determines the output. You have to be very specific if you want to get the output you want. And the more descriptive and detailed the prompt is, the better the results. If you are not obtaining the results you need, then you should provide an example of the needed output, either by pasting it in or attaching it to the prompt window. You can even request that the LLM create a prompt for you once it gets the idea. So you can always reuse the more efficient prompt in the future. Now, one important thing to know is that ChatGPT and Copilot will always remember prior content that you've pasted into a particular chat session or you've uploaded. So even after you return to that chat a few days later, it'll still be there waiting. You don't have to re-input. You can just continue on. In other words, you can stack uploads and work around, like Copilot has a single upload at a time limit. You can just say, prompt me for the next document, and it will. And it'll load that in and consider both documents that you've uploaded. So I want to emphasize, and we're going to add this in links that you'll receive eventually, and that is there is a really wonderful prompt engineering guide available for industry professionals and, of course, for students. It gives several examples of different types of prompts, as well as different techniques for generating those prompts. Now, I have to say that one of the prompts that I begin with almost always as an instructional designer is acting as an instructional designer. Or if you're analyzing a legal document, acting as a legal analyst. Prompt it to focus on the area of expertise and then continue on with your prompt. That has almost always worked well for me. Now, one of the cool things that you can do with AI is generate images. One of the best uses is to personalize image content for courses. Many times we settle for images that are only loosely applied to the topic of hand by going to Getty Images or Adobe stock photos and getting something close, but it's not quite there. In this case, I was helping develop a humanitarian aid course. And in this particular case, I used DALL-E to create basically the transportation of human aid in conflict zones with border countries, replacing restrictions on food products entering their borders. So in this second image over, I had to specify that vegetables and food were not allowed into the country. So I needed them on the ground outside of the truck with equipment on top of the truck. Try finding that at a general image repository. Well, you can see the beginning of the prompt right here. It's part of the name of the file, a truck with equipment on board and vegetables on the ground. And that's exactly what it produced. So very, very beneficial. But here, there are dangers of not being specific in prompts. And here's a rather, I think, funny example. Yeah, I wanted to create a 3-forked path, and that's what it did, kind of, sort of. This is what I wanted. That's what I got. But then I thought I was going to, be more successful, and I asked for a path with 3 branches. Well, it was a little challenge counting sometimes, so I put 4 branches on the path, but that's definitely another failed prompt. I wasn't being specific enough. Here was the winner. 1 path leading to 3 diverging paths. Notice the specificity of the prompt, and notice I got the result that I wanted. So there's a bit of a lesson there, a rather funny one, and I have many, many others to share we don't have time for. Now, on to a very meaty area of instructional design, that is creating a written assignment. Now, what you have to do in creating written assignments is you have to, or any assignment or assessment, is that you need to upload, preload information about the course, about the assignment. In one case, I had an issue where I had to create an entire module, assignments and everything, because my SME, my faculty member, fell ill and was in a hospital for a couple of weeks. I could not reach him. It was nearing the end of the production. I had 2 more modules to produce. And I was able to turn to AI and load in enough information that it came out with some really wonderful assignments. And they were vetted by another SME here, of course, and they gave the go-ahead to use that. So give you an example of kind of creating a written assignment using ChatGPT. for example, and I'm going to use this instance of ChatGPT because this will, I preloaded it with our template just to give it some formatting, although I even include the formatting in the prompt just to be cautious. But so I will go ahead and copy the actual prompt, and I'll copy the background information and show it to you in just a second. So let me actually, I'm seeing that this probably hadn't gone through, so I'm going to go ahead to another instance of ChatGPT and work on that. Okay, so I placed in acting as an expert instructional designer and college professor teaching a master's degree level online course. So whatever level you're aiming for, this course was on network server operations, and I gave it some of the constraints, including the request to build a rubric. And then I gave the formatting of the actual written assignment. It begins with an introduction section, instructions, and then a formatting of how the students will, produce the end product. And then I gave some background information. So okay, let's go on down. So here it's producing the introduction, the instructions, definitions, different aspects of it, the format of the paper, and hopefully it'll go into the rubric. And if it doesn't, sometimes it hiccups. If it doesn't produce a rubric, you just ask for the rubric, and here it goes. It's making it. So it does pretty well. It uses Bloom's verbs, except I can see up here it shows clear understanding, so that will need to be changed. So some light editing will need to be done, but generally speaking, this is about 45 minutes or at least an hour or more, including the SME's time. It could be a few days worth of work done in a matter of a few seconds. So that's written assignments. Moving on to presentations. Now, currently most LLMs will produce a presentation outline only. It doesn't produce the entire presentation, with one exception, which I'll show you in a moment. They include bullets for each slide, descriptions for finding ideal images online, and the narration, all in an outline format. Here's an example that I'm going to use with ChatGPT. I'm going to pop in this prompt into ChatGPT, and I'm going to want to use that last one that I used to basically it'll build a presentation using that structure. And I'm going to ask for this, and let's see what it produces. Okay, so it gives me title, subtitle, image suggestions, narration, and it moves on to each one of those slides. Now, one thing that it doesn't do is actually build the entire presentation. And for a $20 a month subscription, which for Copilot, but not the same Copilot that's used at USD, for example, for students and faculty and staff. This Copilot is the Copilot integrated into Microsoft's 365 products. So if you use those 365 products for a $20 subscription, it will integrate Copilot into PowerPoint, MS Word, also the others, Excel, whatnot. But just as of about 3 weeks ago, it was able to create a presentation on the fly, such as this one here, and it's absolutely amazing what it could do. It actually took, found all the images. It went, I didn't give it any other instructions other than, excuse me, I have to escape one more time. It didn't need any prompting or any additional information. I asked it to go out on the web and to build this from the repository it has on the web, scraping as Heather mentioned, and it did a great job. It's well designed, well animated, not too much on any particular page. The images are ideally suited to what you want. out of the presentation. So as you can see, it's pretty well done. And it just requires light editing from you. Again, another huge savings of time. I also have to sadly say that my slides are proof that the AI did not build my presentation. So, okay. Moving back to the branching scenarios. Branching scenarios are a really interesting way to engage students, and they pose a situation or issue that needs resolving, right? So learners are provided with information that might help them resolve the situation, but at least provides the context of the problem. Then they're asked to choose between different ways forward to resolve it. These typically are ungraded and give free rein to students to learn from their mistakes or incorrect choices. So basically, what it can help produce is a text storyboard to begin. This is the area where the faculty or SME will go ahead and just fill out these basic areas. What's the introduction to the scenario? The basic context. The dilemma. What is the dilemma? And then the various choices, in this case, 2 choices, are given to students. Would you do this or would you do that? And then based on their choice, like if they chose choice A, then this is the result of choice A, one possible result, and it can continue going deeper. Same with choice B. And then there's a conclusion and then the opportunity to retry things. That the AI was actually able to innovate to help me with a particular scenario that had 3 choices, and it gets a bit complex when you go there. So what it suggested was, what it could do is that students could, it prompted me that you create 2 choices and then offload the 3rd choice to the student at the end. So the student would have to create the 3rd alternative choice, and then they would share their findings in the module discussion board. So that became a really engaging example of how AI could be utilized not only in the branching scenario, but brought over to discussion. And it was a lively discussion. And I think, as they say in basketball, it's kind of because students had skin in the game, as they say. So that was pretty exciting to see. So branching scenarios. So after, just briefly to show you, after the text storyboard is done, then, and maybe Copilot can help in this now, it can translate that into a PowerPoint with graphics that are appropriate. At some points, students are asked to input. So this is done in a particular multimedia program called Storyline, where students could input, hey, what was your rationale for making that choice? And then later at the end, they were asked, hey, have you changed your mind after hearing all this additional information? So pretty exciting, I think, and a pretty engaging way to move students into different areas. And here's an example of the final output of one of the storyline. Okay. You probably can't hear this, but this is a text-to-speech voice that was really excellent. And it's setting the stage for the entire scenario. They're introduced into the basics. They're given the situation, the context of it all. Then they are asked to make a choice. They make a choice, and now they put in that text-based rationale. Branching scenarios, give them a try. And AI can certainly be of help in that. Now, I'm pretty excited about this because this is something that can offload the tedium as an instructional designer of uploading documents and prompts and all of this into AI just to get it to do what you want it to do, right? And so what you could do is take the most successful prompts, the ones that give you the best output, and you pre-upload it into what's called a custom GPT. And what you do is, once you've uploaded all of them, you ask it to build an interface and it runs like an application. Here's an example of that. So this is called Course Builder Assistant, and this was to be shared by instructional designers and eventually with faculty once we get the bugs out. But basically, it helps build courses by guiding students through structured templates and essential details. type start to begin. So start. Now what it'll do is it'll list all of the different things it can help you make without uploading a single prompt. Really, you do still need to upload information, but that in a moment. So let's say you wanted to produce an entire module. Okay, and so now it's going to prompt you for, okay, I need information about that module as much as you can give me, as we've described earlier. So it's asking for course title, module overview, any MLOs, discussion, any information you can provide it, it's going to be able to create the module closer to what you would expect. In this case, I'm just going to upload a simple prompt saying, asking it to create a complete Module 1 course map for an introductory course on instructional design. So again, it's going to go back, it's going to search credible resources, pull together an entire first module on, basic principles of instructional design. So it gives the module overview, gives the MLOs. Have a couple, you have two verbs, you need one, but minor things. It gives some required reading and resources. You're going to have to double check that due to what they call hallucinations, where it can hallucinate a resource. So what I'll do at the end is I'll ask it, not this time, but I will ask it to provide the URLs, the full URLs to each, and it's getting better and better. The choices of video tend to be high viewership, credible resource as a qualification, and so you can check all those out. It moves on, gives a learning activity, a discussion prompt, and it also gives an assignment following the format that I desire, and yes, the grading rubric. So all of that, that's 2 weeks of work, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks of work. So that's been potentially somewhat offloaded. Still needs to be vetted. Okay, on to simulations. Now, I was excited about the last one because of what it can currently do for us. This is something that is very interesting to me because simulations are able to break a barrier that we currently have with asynchronous courses, such as our online courses. They're asynchronous, means not live. They can't be live because people are anywhere in the world taking the course, or time zones, etc. So you can't easily mix synchronous elements or live content with asynchronous. But with AI being available 24/7, it can provide that synchronous input. It can provide feedback when needed. And in cases of simulations, it can provide simulated environments that are text-based. Right now, only text-based, but they're quickly moving into integrating immersive environments. So text to video is becoming very common now. So in a moment, relatively speaking, a few moments, you can produce very targeted videos and audio on demand. Eventually, they'll be immersive. So are they simulations? Are they real-time games? They're really aspects of both. It basically adds a live personalized component to our otherwise asynchronous courses. It's very rare right now, but it's going to become increasingly common as you move forward in your careers. We have examples. I had a couple of examples. One is just a server vocabulary simulation where it takes vocabulary that students have learned throughout the course and drills them based on scenarios like, hey, here's a situation. What terminology best applies to this problem? And so it's context-based vocabulary, which is really a unique twist and very, very cool. I only had time to show you one of these. And basically, this is a finding the insider threat. This is basically a turn-based game, a role-playing game in which you take on a role of investigating a hacking job in your corporation. In order to make this thing fly, you have to provide the AI a list of topics covered in the course so it knows what its guardrails are, what its boundaries are. And then you have to provide instructions to get started. So in my case, I wanted, let's see, I'll just choose one of my many ChatGPTs that are open. Okay, here's this one. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the list of topics. I already have that in a folder right here, list of topics. Open that, and then I need to provide a prompt. This is a rather lengthy prompt because it describes the kind of game that it needs to build on the fly. So I'm going to copy this into the prompt area. Prior to beginning this game, please review the general topics from an online course in cybersecurity for use as source material for this game. And you can read on at your leisure. But basically, it tells it how to craft the game, what's expected, and then you go ahead and run it. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to welcome the students, provide a scenario, give them different instructions for how to use it, the game rules, that kind of thing. So, and it gives you clues. That's funny. So it's turn one. What will you do first? So it's saying that, you know, here's the issues that you have right now. Go ahead and tell, do you want to interview a person? Do you want to investigate a system? Maybe we interview. Let's just give this a try. Interview a person. Oops, I said perso. Oh, I got it. So you can interview someone, and it gives you the situation and people to interview, and you keep moving on and you earn points as you get it right. And if you don't, it'll kind of redirect you to hopefully getting the correct information. It moves on. So much more interesting than the typical kind of you know, online experience that you get today, the asynchronous experience. So well, I can say that with that, as exciting as these tools can be, there's the consideration that just because we IDs and students and faculty can seemingly leverage everything AI with AI, doesn't mean that we should. Ethical considerations are huge. So let's turn to Heather for some guidelines. Heather?
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
So, right, there are a lot of factors we need to consider when weighing the pros and cons of AI. And working in higher education, we have a responsibility, I believe, to approach AI thoughtfully and critically, not just as another tool set to add to our toolbox. There are many issues that require us to think critically and ethically, and this is by all means not a complete list, but the accuracy of the output and whose perspective is represented, how the technology works, the companies who are developing these tools, you know, who is the CEO, who are the board of directors, what do they believe, what are their worldviews, ideologies, motivations. Using these tools requires us to put our trust in corporations who are developing these tools for profit and may not share our same concerns. We can't truly evaluate how these tools work either because they are shielded by proprietary laws protecting their business. At the same time, these AI companies have scraped data from the internet, including copyrighted works from authors, poets, scholars, artists, without their knowledge or consent. It's been called systemic theft on a mass scale. In academia, one of our ethos is academic integrity, where we give credit where it's due to others who come up with ideas, theories, inventions. We cite our sources, and this is how we advance research and discourse in our fields. Yet these companies don't provide transparency into their sources. And AI complicates this idea of citing sources because it's not a person, although every bit of data has come from people, including its users, you and me, when we sign up for an account. We don't know what they do with our data or the safeguards they have in place to protect it, because data is the real product. It's what advances the field of AI. And every bit of data that goes into AI has come from people, and people come with bias. So the data that is fed into AI has bias, and this can lead to discrimination. Take one recent study out of the University of Washington, which tested 3 open source LLMs to screen resumes. It favored white associated names 85% of the time and female associated names 11% of the time. And in over 3 million job, race, and gender combinations they tested, Black men fared the worst, with the models preferring other candidates nearly 100% of the time. So as employers increasingly use AI to process job applications, this bias that is baked into AI can lead to discriminatory hiring practices. And despite what many want to believe or have been led to believe, AI is not a knowledge machine, and it is prone to make errors and mistakes. For instance, AI is being used in hospital and medical settings for transcriptions, and it has made things up that weren't said. This can have dire consequences if someone gets the wrong diagnosis. It can also generate misinformation, which is dangerous for democracy. AI uses an exorbitant amount of water and energy to power their data centers, which could potentially speed up the climate crisis. It's been estimated that AI consumes 2 to 12 liters of water for each kilowatt hour of energy, so about a bottle of water per email. The sheer resources required to build and sustain large AI models tend to benefit wealthy organizations, while climate change hits marginalized communities the hardest. If you're interested in exploring AI's impact on the environment, here is a curated list that Lisa shared from a PhD student in learning sciences at Northwestern University who is tracking the ongoing media coverage of these harms. Right now, the AI tech industry is regulating itself, which basically means it's the wolf guarding the henhouse at this point. There's no real oversight. Personally, I don't trust companies to regulate themselves just because the motive for profit seems to trump everything else, and these ethical issues can take a back seat, like what happened back in 2008 with the financial sector. And similar to that, AI is being dominated by just a handful of big tech companies. So even though these ethical issues and risks I mentioned have not been worked out and tested to make sure they are safe for the public and the planet, companies are going full steam ahead with rolling out AI, despite these concerns, because they are pumping billions of dollars into these products. And actually, they're not making money, at least not enough to offset the cost of AI. They're in the red. OpenAI is expected to lose about $5 billion this year, just like they have for the past few years. So if it feels like AI hype is everywhere, it could be because these companies are engaging in some major thirst traps to try and sell this idea, both to investors and everyone, that AI is going to revolutionize the world. But it's mostly being touted for its future capabilities, like artificial general intelligence, versus what it's currently capable of. So that should tell us something. For AI to continue getting better, it will need to consume more and more energy, and the entire power grid would need to be revamped, which is not something that can happen quickly, easily, or cheaply. So AI in the near future may not get all that much better than what it is now, especially if investor money dries up. Apple recently stopped investing in OpenAI. So if you keep hearing that this technology is inevitable and you better learn this or you will get left behind, that might just be the last please from an AI bubble that's bursting. We just don't know. And personally, I wouldn't put all my eggs in this basket at this point. And I think it's important to be informed about its development from multiple sources, not just those promoting it. So how do we move forward with using AI then, knowing that these ethical issues and risks persist? Responsible and ethical AI use is anything but straightforward. And for some, maybe this means resisting AI, because there is justifiable rationale for resisting AI. And on the other end of the spectrum, there is justifiable rationale for using AI. So it comes down to what sits right with you and your values and your context. It's important for us as academics, critical thinkers, and learners to assess, critique, and interrogate the different layers of AI through various lenses: technological, political, economic, ecological, sociological, psychological. Who are these tools designed for? Whose perspective is represented and who is left out? Who benefits and who or what pays the price? Continue this line of questioning. Even if you choose not to use generative AI tools, I think it's important to become educated about and examine the various layers of AI, because they no doubt are having an impact on work, school, life, everything. I've created some guidelines for students using AI where they have to critically analyze and reflect on their learning, and these are linked here for you to peruse at your own time if you like, but for now I'm going to skip this section. So what does AI mean for education then? There is a lot to ponder here, so I'll just say some of the things I've been thinking about. And I'll start by zooming in on what I think are the more immediate concerns, and then I'll zoom out to the bigger picture of what I hope the future of education can look like. As a writer, I of course think about what John Warner said: writing is thinking. This is why journaling is so effective. One thing that I thought was interesting is that I asked a professor of artificial intelligence recently if she uses AI for her writing, and she said no. Writing is fundamentally linked to how we think. So if students outsource most of their writing over to AI, that can make it incredibly easy to then outsource your thinking. I also think in terms of writing, students need to be incentivized to express themselves authentically. And typically academic programs require a certain standardized style of writing that's often disconnected from the person writing it. So students may actually get rewarded with higher grades by using AI over their own writing. So we need to make sure our reward systems are aligned with what we say we value, like student voice. There's this learning theory called desirable difficulty that suggests that struggling with complex ideas actually changes the brain and strengthens neural pathways for deeper learning. What if we completely remove that challenge, because students can now just turn to AI for quick answers, similar to relying on a calculator or GPS? What if students no longer have to productively struggle with complex ideas or perspectives? Why bother reading literature when you can just read the cliff notes or summaries of summaries until it's completely flat and made into a crumb? The thing about summaries is it's someone else's, or in the case of AI, something else's summary. Maybe you would take away something different and meaningful to you from reading a book that AI didn't mention. So why would students be tempted to shortchange their learning anyway? I always try to design courses that are intrinsically engaging for students, but people are engaged by different things. And sometimes it's not you as a student don't care about your learning, but you have other competing priorities and you just need to get your assignment turned in. AI can make it possible to do that very quickly. But what if this is done at the expense of learning? Well, sometimes tools made for productivity and efficiency are not great for deep learning. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they aren't. One thing AI is making more apparent in education is how schools typically focus more on the end product, papers, grades, diplomas, performance, than the learning process. I think we will need to shift the focus more to the learning process, including giving students space to take intellectual risks and make mistakes without penalty and is on their own timeline and is also more aligned to what intrinsically motivates them, which may be different for each person. Now let's zoom out, way out. For those of you who may not know, this photo is called Earthrise, and it was taken in 1968 during the Apollo 8 mission. This photo is often attributed to astronaut Edgar Mitchell, but he didn't take it. William Anders did. Edgar Mitchell did say this, though, about his time on the moon in 1971. You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it. From out there on the moon, international politics looks so petty. It's all about perspective. We now have an education system that is ill-prepared for our current reality on Earth, especially in terms of addressing our most urgent challenges: climate crisis, war, global poverty, public health. The purpose of mass schooling when it was developed during the turn of the century was to train students who would go on to work in factories during the Industrial Revolution. And schools were also made to kind of mimic factories, hence the term factory model of schooling. You can sort of picture a conveyor belt of students being churned out efficiently, where they all learn the same things at the same time, instilling behavior and attitudes that would help them succeed in a factory, like obedience. They inspect the student for any perceived deficits using ranking and sorting tools like grades, stamping them with this label the same way as eggs or meat in a factory. And they would simply fill their empty vessel brains with what adults deem as important. Schools, by and large, still operate this way, where it is decided what students should know in advance with standardized one-size-fits-all curriculum and testing. And the list of what students should know gets bigger and bigger. Yet their performance on these standardized tests doesn't really improve. So we go harder and round we go. And at the same time, this academic pressure to succeed in this system is creating a mental health crisis among young people. And in the process, it's making them hate learning, at least in school. With the way knowledge is growing at exponential speeds, it is impossible to predict what students will need to know. We need to let go of the idea that we can fill students' heads with knowledge using machine-like methods, because that is not how knowledge acquisition works. We can't open up someone's head and pour knowledge in. Unlike machines, humans learn by making meaning. You learn what is most meaningful to you, and what is meaningful to you is unique to your context: physical, emotional, social, cultural, and we have research to support that. It's based on personal and shared experience, and here's the essential part: requires agency and autonomy. We can't be force-fed. We need to be able to control our learning. How, when, what, where, and most importantly, why. As humans, we crave meaning and purpose, and we want to contribute positively to the world. At the same time, we seek to develop our own unique capabilities. The way I visualize it is each person can become sort of a specialist in their own area of expertise and can collaborate with others with unique expertise to solve problems similar to interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary teams, but even more customized to the student because it needs to be intrinsically motivating to them. Remember that feeling of flow I talked about when I write? That's where we want people to be when they're learning and working, because that's when they're at their best. If students are learning and working on things that matter to them and is on their own terms, they won't be tempted to use AI to shortcut their learning for easy answers. What would be the point? they will want to learn for its own sake, which is what we should want. We want students to be able to play with ideas, concepts, processes, not fearing making mistakes, because this is part of the learning process, and have freedom to take intellectual risks and use their creativity and imagination towards the solving of problems and inventing new paradigms. Our education system needs to be an environment that cultivates a culture of human intelligence, not obedience. Maybe you've seen this cartoon before. A man sitting in front of a monkey, a penguin, an elephant, a goldfish, a seal, and a dog. He says, "For fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree." We shouldn't have the same standards for every student because this is inequitable. Each student should determine their own standards and get support they need to achieve them so that each person can contribute to solving the world's most pressing problems in ways that complement, not compete against each other. There are no standardized people, so there should be no standardized education. AI has the potential to transform education, but only if it's developed in a way that's safe, ethical, and focused on people, by the people, for the people, especially marginalized communities and the planet, not just for profit. If done right, AI can help students personalize their learning and take control of their education. In fact, Dr. Yang Zhao has a really good paper on this, which Lisa will put in the chat. However, we still have a long way to go. The image here, by the way, is an example of solar punk art, a genre that imagines how technology can help create a sustainable, eco-friendly future. It sits between two extremes, the skepticism of the neo-Luddite movement and the unchecked optimism of tech billionaires. Solar punk challenges us to redefine progress, shifting the focus from profit at all costs to improving both human and environmental well-being. It also honors indigenous knowledge and the wisdom of diverse cultures, reminding us that nature itself is the original OG teacher and inventor. So with or without AI, reimagining an education system that truly puts the learner as a human being at the center is a powerful idea that resonates with me as an instructional designer and an educator, because I believe that each person has value and each person has something valuable to offer in their own right. This is what makes us human. I think we can celebrate and support the unique strengths and abilities of each learner on their own journey. So that is my hope for how education can be reconfigured to meet the needs of our present and evolving reality. If we can just take a step back and look at the big picture, I think there will be a new dawn for education, one that embraces our shared humanity and life on this planet. As learning designers, we have a huge stake in the future of education, what it looks like, who it serves, and how it can be harnessed using human-centered design to solve our most pressing problems. For those exploring the field of learning design, I hope you see this opportunity as something you can contribute to by bringing your unique perspectives, creativity, strength, and passion for designing meaningful learning experiences. Because this field is more than just creating content. It's about shaping environments where learners feel valued, engaged, and empowered to explore their potential. So while this work is challenging, it is also incredibly rewarding, and it's an exciting time to be entering into this field. If you decide to apply to the MS-LDT program, I look forward to getting to know you and nerding out with you on these topics and more in learning design. So we have a few minutes left, and we'd like to open it up to your questions. Let us know in the chat what you're thinking about or curious to learn more about. And we also ask that you reconsider the question, what does AI mean to you?
Great. I froze earlier and I missed my opportunity to introduce Dr. Evans, but she's also here with us today, our fearless leader and academic director. So thank you also for joining us, Dr. Evans.
Hi, everyone.
It's great to see. I see that we have some students and alumni, as well as new faces to our webinar. So thank you all for joining us. It's great to see you all. I'm going to scroll back. I saw some of the responses, Heather, to your initial question. We had someone talk about as a tool that supports their work. A couple of people noted that. I think that was one of the big ones that we were seeing for this.
Jeff, Nick had a question about the AI generated presentation and your speaker notes. Were they also AI generated?
All of the, well, no, my speaker notes that I used and what Heather created were all on our own. But the actual, the presentation notes, which I think you're referring to, is that was all generated by AI. So that would definitely be something you would want to edit and take a close look at. And everything that AI produces is prone to error, and they warn you of that up front in almost every output that they create. So just keep that in mind. It's a great starting point. A lot of us tend to fill up presentations with bullet points, and students are just reading that as you're presenting. So this tends to produce some pretty well balanced on-screen content, and then the narration is different. It's not just repeating what you're seeing on the screen. So it's value added in a way. So I thought I've been pretty impressed with Copilot could do. And keep in mind, this is as bad as it's going to get, hopefully, no Terminator aspects to this. But the point is that AI is already very capable to help you as a tool in your work. And it's going to become more capable. The next step are AI agents. And so those AI agents will become personalized agents to help you accomplish things using several products. There's even talk about it actually being able to use your computer to accomplish tasks. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah, it's really becoming capable, and presentations are one example of that right now.
We've got a couple of minutes left. I see one comment here. I've been using AI to organize my project proposals. When I'm too deep in the project, I need to take a step back so that it's organized and makes sense to leadership. So that's a great response. Why don't we go ahead and advance this slide, and we can talk about ways to connect.
Yeah, so here's our contact info if you would like to get in touch with us. We both have our emails and our LinkedIn's here, so feel free to reach out if you have questions or want to chat or anything. And then
thank you. So as I mentioned, I know we already have some students and alumni here, so you guys already are well aware of this information, but for those of you who are maybe new to LDT or have been thinking about the program for a little while, we just wanted to share some quick information if you're interested in pursuing the program. Our MS-LDT program is made up of 10 3-unit courses for a total of 30 academic units. So this program is designed to be completed in 5 consecutive semesters over 20 months. Each semester is 14 weeks long, and students focus on one 7-week class at a time. This 100% online degree program is designed with working professionals in mind, and we have 3 starts per year. So we are ready when you are, if you're looking to start in the spring, the summer, or the fall. If you could advance to the next slide. Our spring class starts on January 7th. So if you're interested in joining our spring 2025 class, all of the application materials are due by December 2nd. So if you are interested, we'll be sending a follow-up email with the recording, some links to resources, so you can respond to that email to get more information, or you can head to our website, designtech.cnego.edu, and fill out a request for information form, and we're happy to connect with you from there. Let's see if there were any last questions.
Nick had one question, but I'll ask our presenters to respond to that, and the response can go to everyone when they get the recording. So Nick, we see it. We're going to get your response, and everyone will benefit from your question and the presenter's perspective. Thank you.
Good deal. Great. Alrighty. Well, we will go ahead and end it here. Thank you all again so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.